Hey, I'm Chad. This is a quick overview of the code behind the Translator bot demo that hopefully is a video right above this one. Let's take a look at the code. It's in the Daily AI Examples repo. I'm looking at that here. I'm inside the translation chatbot folder and looking at bot.py. These are all just sort of imports that we don't need to worry too much about. There are two custom processors that we will come back to in just a second. There's translation processor as well as translation subtitles. As always, the fun stuff happens inside the main function inside this file here. This is where we create our transport object. This is where we tell the app that we want to use daily for the transport, so it'll connect us to a daily room. We're configuring a couple of services here, text-to-speech and LLM. We're using Azure text-to-speech because they actually do a better job with non-English speakers in my experience, but you can swap this to any service you want. Likewise, we're using GPT-4 right now, but I've tried other models. They work really well for this translation thing as well. A couple of other things. Sentence aggregator is actually from the built-in aggregators class. This is just a handy way in case transcripts come back in little snippets of sentences. This will ensure that we get full sentences that we pass into translation. This is where we instantiate one of our custom processors. In this case, the translation processor. We're telling it we want to do Spanish. Come to that in a second. This is an LLM full response aggregator. We're using this so that if the LLM decides to break up what it says into sentences, we know that we're getting the full response before we then send it to text-to-speech in order to just make it sound a little bit better. This is another custom processor or custom service. This is translation subtitles. Come back to that again in a second. This is where we define our pipeline. It starts with a sentence aggregator. So we're taking the snippets of what the user says. We're aggregating them into full sentences, which then this will emit text frames. Those text frames go to the translation processor. That's where we create a system, or we create an LLM prompt that we will use to get translated text. And if we go look at that real quick, actually now's a good time. This is translation processor. All it's doing is creating an LLM messages frame that contains two entries. The first one says, you'll be provided with a sentence in English and your task is to translate it into Spanish. Then the next entry in that context is just whatever the user said. So this is what we pass to the LLM, and we just ask it to complete that. So after that, we send that to the LLM. This is where the actual LLM completion happens. And then because the LLM response comes back as streaming, so like single words or, fragments of sentences or whatever, we use this to make sure that we are getting the entire result of what the LLM said was the translation. So we know that we have a full sentence translated. That's where we go into this translation subtitles frame processor or service here. What this does is whenever a translation comes through, it creates an app message frame. This is part of the daily transport that basically allows us to send the translated text to other call participants in the daily JS world as an app message. This is a mechanism inside daily that you can use to send basically JSON objects to people in the call. So this way, if we wanted to, for example, display Spanish subtitles in the client app, we now have access to the translated text directly from the bot. It'll show up in the other clients. The client's going to just display it down in the, at the bottom of the screen like they would with other subtitles. Finally, from there, we go to text-to-speech, and that's where we actually generate the audio. The audio frames come out of this service, go to the transport, and that's where you get the Spanish-speaking audio that you hear in the video.